Hello everybody, and welcome to today's painting session. I hope you're all well. Thank you for coming. And today in our fun-filled Foxton Friday paint-along session, we're going to be painting a rather strange-shaped little squash. I like this squash. I thought it would be a really good subject, partly because it just looks like it's going to be fun to paint. But partly because it has really three main local colours, although two of them are pretty close. We'll get into this in a minute. And also squashes are a little bit like lemons because they're kind of, I think I've long had a theory that the reason that lemons are so popular to paint for artists is that a big part of what we need to do to make good paintings is to simplify what we see. Simplify the forms, simplify the colours as much as we can to make stronger paintings and to be able to think our way into the form, to creating realistic form. Simplification, absolutely key. And now if you go to paint an orange, say, it's pretty much a perfect sphere most of the time, a very, very difficult shape to paint. If you reduce that sphere to planes, then it's easier to paint. And lemons are kind of lumpy, and they kind of already are reduced to planes. And funnily enough, so are squashes. This one is anyway. So I've set myself a challenge today for the paint along, and I hope you'll have a go at this as well. We're going to try and pre-mix some colours to paint the squash. We're going to try to mix the minimum amount of colours, okay? So I've been looking at this reference photo. I think we need 8 colours. Okay, so we're going to mix them. Probably won't mix all of them right away. We'll mix them and then paint them on and mix them and then paint them on. But I reckon it can be done with 8. Not the whole painting, obviously, but probably 90% of it. Certainly enough to get the colour study down and to be able to see the form. And then with a bit of texture, with a bit of edge handling, should be enough to get us really close, okay? Let me switch over to the easel. Now I have got a 5 by 7 inch. This is a linen panel, which it actually came oil primed, but I've actually given it another layer because they're so stingy on the oil primer panel manufacturers. And I've got the paints out already. I've got lead white. I've got 2 yellows, my usual 2 yellows, an orange yellow and a green yellow. You could say, if you really wanted to, a warm yellow and a cool yellow. This still looks pretty warm to me though. Anyway, an orange yellow and a green yellow, and the reason for these 2 is because it gives me a wider range of hues that I can reach at high chroma if I need them at high chroma, okay? Quinacridone rose with our warm yellow, our cadmium yellow. That's going to let us get the oranges that we need on the light side of the kind of the neck, if you like, the stem of the squash. Transparent red oxide is going to help us get the shadow colours on the neck of the squash, the stem. Green gold is going to help us get to the colours that we want on the greenish kind of body of the squash. Raw umber because it's very useful for dropping chroma, and I don't ever paint without it. Ivory black for the same reason. I don't think we're going to need anything else, but we'll see. We'll see as we go along how we do. Hopefully, we'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. Argelane, I didn't know you were in Delft. That's very well. It seems like it would be a very cool place to live. I bet you've got some good museums with still life paintings there, haven't you? Dutch still life paintings. Looks like we're all good today. Natalia says the squash is stylish. I agree. Quirky would be another. Quirky and stylish are the same thing, right? One person's style is another person's quirky. It looks like a swan. David's got the mention of Chroma Magic in. I probably will get it out today, actually. I probably will get... Shall I get Chroma Magic out? I probably will get it out today. Marjolaine, I'm coming to visit, all right? I want to be taken around all those wonderful still life paintings. Okay, first things first. In here, I have got some linseed oil and a little bit of solvent. I use terps. I know a lot of people don't like it for very good reasons. You can use something else. But solvent is good. A little bit of solvent just helps it dry a little bit quicker, you know, in the initial layers. So I'm going to get a little bit of this on my makeup sponge, dab off the excess, coat the panel. If you've been to one of these sessions before, you know I always, almost always, 99% of the time I do this. Helps the brush flow, helps the paint flow, helps everything breathe. You don't have to do it. Obviously, if you do this, you can't get that kind of dry brush broken colour effect, but that, you know, that's a pretty niche effect anyway, it seems to me. But you must remember, if you do this, to wipe off as much as you possibly can, so you end up with a really, really thin layer. Right, just so the surface feels a little bit slick. Okay, we've got to do some drawing out. What brush shall we use for drawing out today? A lumpy one. I am using a number 1 Cornelison's Series 42 flat. It's a hog bristle. I'm going to mix up a bit of white with a bit of raw umber. Lots of different ways you can do this stage of a painting. I've got another one that I'm doing a demo painting for people who are on the Secret Life of Flower Paintings workshop. I'm going to do that one really differently, so I'll show you it actually. It's such a different approach. So I do like to show people different approaches. The fundamentals are always the same, but you might like a different approach, you know. So this has obviously been drawn out a little more carefully on an ampersand panel. Had no oil on it, that was dry when I drew that out. So then that means once that's dry, once the paint is dried, then you can oil out over it and you won't destroy your drawing. Make sense? I've just noticed something really interesting. In Chroma Magic, actually it puts a grid on your paint, on your photo, right, if you want it. Because I put a grid on this photo, but I only put the center lines, you know, the central horizontal and the central vertical, just to kind of give everybody a starting point. But Chroma Magic has put a grid on it. It's an option, right? Must be an option. Maybe I hit it by accident. Oh yeah, look at that. And you can turn it off. I love this app. I'm still playing with the new version and I like it very much. Natalia says, I vote your wife should create still lifes for your live streams. She actually does more than you would guess. I once had a painting in an open exhibition in London. They don't go in for those kind of things anymore. You know, I thought I had quite a nice setup, and I was sitting, back then I didn't have a studio, and I was sitting in the living room painting, furthest left point, by the way, furthest right point. I had a bowl of water with a sprig of heather, and she came in with a little yellow flower and popped it into the water. And that painting, and I thought, oh yeah, it looks marvellous. So I painted the flower in the water, and that painting got into the exhibition and then sold. So I think you're right. Highest point of the kind of the body of the squash, lowest point of the body of the squash, quite handily about halfway down here. Highest point of the stem of the squash, would you say? About there. Maybe. Maybe that's too... No, I think it's probably all right. I think it's probably all right. I think we're going to be okay. So now, you know, I mean, the stem starts to curve up from about here. So I like to find all of these reference points just so I know, you know, like early on what I'm dealing with. Just makes it easier to kind of get everything pretty much in the right place. I'll catch up with the comments once I've done a little bit more of the drawing out. So simplifying form. So simplifying is the name of the game today. So the curves of the squash are going to be done simplified with straight lines. Helps you get your curves right. The classic straight line blocking. Division point. Probably about there. Between the stem and the body of the squash, I would guess. You can see that it's like it's fluted. It's in section. I imagine it's hexagonal. This part, the stem. Lovely. Just such a nice form, you know. It's one of those things where I looked at it and I thought immediately I could see clear planes of light and shadow, and I love that in an object. You know, it kind of makes me think, yeah. I immediately want to paint it because I immediately start thinking, what's that shadow colour there? What's the light colour? And then I can see blending between them for the other colours, and I start to think, yeah, you know, that would be nice to paint. Not too bothered about perfect accuracy today, but I do want to get it something like, you know, we'll get it in anyway. And the body of the squash here as well, you can kind of simplify it down to a few kind of straight lines. And you can see, like, I kind of do it like this, because, you know, your wrist is, on a small painting like this anyway, your wrist is really a really handy way to be able to get, like, you know, like that. Fairly straight lines. On a bigger one, you could be going from your elbow or from your shoulder. Like if I want a long horizontal along here, I'd be doing that from my shoulder. I've got that entirely in the wrong place though. Let's have at least some semblance of if not accuracy, at least it being the right thing. I think it's because this is too far. I think that's too far to the left. I'd rather be making changes now than after I've got some paint down. And you know, I'm also drawn to paint variegated objects. This is too high here. And I think the biggest mistake I've made is this is too high. I don't know why I ended up there. It should be like here. So let's be sorting that out before we go any further. It's not a good start, is it, if I start making loads of mistakes in the drawing, like in the first 5 minutes. I'm sure everything else is going to go really well, though. You know, it'll be fine. I think it's because I forgot to have lunch today. So, you know, it's highly likely that my tummy's going to start rumbling at some point soon. So now this is too wide because I dropped the bottom part of it. I was thinking something didn't feel quite right about it. Yeah, I think that's a bit more. That will go back to there and then start coming down, I think. Straight line down to the nub. That's better. Shadows. We've got a beautiful cast shadow. A lovely shape over here. And you can just see a little bit of it there. Then cast shadow back up here, which meets that. So this is all a shadow shape there. I like to block in my shadow shapes as shapes. I think they're so important to showing the form and the light. I like to see them as value shapes. Don't think there's a lot else really we need to do for now. To think about this in terms of the light and the shadow, like I'll do this separation of the parts of the squash, the stem from the main body of the squash, and kind of get an idea of that hexagon, not hexagram, hexagon. So that would be shadow there. And then on this side, there's a shadow that starts about there, and then it comes all the way around, right up to the top actually. And this, I've got that wrong. That should be not quite that steep. What's wrong? I think that's in the right place though. So maybe this is too far out. Never mind, we'll see what happens when we come to paint it. There's an interesting thing happening here as well, because, so divide that into shadow and light. On the light side, it's the same value as the background. And obviously there's a shadow shape here. This part is shadow. How are we doing? Probably all right. Hello everyone who's just joining now. Nice to see you and thanks for coming.